Karen Bravo, welcome to the Biohacking Secrets Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I have a sexy neon green bandage on my left elbow here, and maybe you can explain to the listeners and viewers what we were just doing.
Well, Anthony just underwent what's called hyperbaric ozone, IV, and some people call it 10 pass, and we basically withdrew 20 or 200 cc's of blood into a sterile bottle, and then we combined that with ozone, and then we sent it back to him very quickly and repeated that 10 times. So basically we ozonated half of your blood volume, roughly, and all the benefits of ozone will go to all the far reaches of your body. Let's see, I think that's, you got 140,000 micrograms of ozone, which sounds like a lot, but it is, and hopefully it will go to all the little places in your body that antibiotics cannot reach, and it will indiscriminately kill microorganisms, viruses, intracellular bacteria. Some people call these like mycoplasma. You might have heard of Lyme. It'll kill yeast and mold and even little parasites and things like that. Antioxidant capabilities will be turned on, turning on your immune system and modulating up if it's low, and if it's overactive, it'll kind of calm it down.
Which would be the case in like autoimmune disease, right?
Yes, correct. It's very important that people understand that ozone is not just oxygen gone wild. It really affects the mitochondria and how they can produce energy. And if the body has energy, if the cells have energy, their blueprint by DNA is to correct and to heal. And so this is a huge step, forcing your body to want to correct itself. It creates cellular energy, cellular money. And so then the cell can pay all of its bills, and then the cell will say, I want to correct this, I want to correct that, I have back work I want to get to, and now I have the energy to do it. So that's how I like to think of it.
So for someone listening who's only heard ozone in the context of their carbon footprint and global warming and that type of stuff, what is ozone and how is it used as a health practitioner? How have you used it? How have other people used it?
Okay. Well, everybody hears about ozone because it's actually out in the stratosphere, and it reacts with a lot of chemicals there, and so it's very easy to measure, and so that's how we look at our index for pollution, up in the skies. But ozone really, when we talk about it medically, we're actually taking medical grade oxygen, and we're putting it through a process where we add an extra oxygen to two oxygens that we call oxygen that we breathe, and it becomes this very reactive molecule, and it actually has oxidant capabilities in the body, but it sets off a chain reaction of events that will lead to the body healing itself. So it has it's been found over the years to have a lot of medicinal purposes. It's been used for everything from water purification to killing bugs in the body. So I'm rattling off things, but it basically goes and kills organisms that cannot repair themselves. Our tissues can, and when we get this oxidative message, our body actually steps up to become more antioxidant, to become in a state where we want to actually correct things. So in that way, it's almost like a homeopathic. We're giving somebody an oxidant, and it's having the opposite effect on our body to actually correct an oxidative stress.
And
okay?
As our understanding grows, we're starting to realize that a lot of what we had thought were antioxidants are actually pro-oxidants. So we were having this conversation with Dr. Merkel, and he was using the example of vitamin C. A lot of people refer to vitamin C as an antioxidant, but it actually has a pro-oxidant effect in the body, and then the body ramps up its production of antioxidants.
Right.
And so there may be some parallels with what's going on with ozone that we will continue to realize as our understanding evolves.
Yes, I think that's true with ozone as well. But the ozone does so many more things. I mean, vitamin C does that at high levels, but ozone has so many different effects at the same time. So that's what I love about it. It's like one part antibiotic, and it's one part helping the body rebuild itself. And it, just creating energy and helping step up the energy production in the mitochondria and helping it function better. There's probably yet we have to really understand about its full impact on the body. But we know clinically I have never seen results like this with anything else, and I've been a doctor for over 30 years. I have never seen anything work this well in so many different ways for so many people. I can't think of any class of medication. And
Which-
I'm not saying medications don't have their place, but ozone just does so many different things that it helps so many different situations.
Yeah.
We see improvements, whether
I
we're
agree.
injecting a joint, or whether we're putting it into the blood, or whether we're putting it into a body compartment, or whether we're injecting it into a scar, or into a wound that's not healing, okay, or into like an infection. You know, I've had people come in, and said, telling me, I've had this thing, festering on my face for 10 years, in and out of antibiotics, and it never goes away, and I give it one injection, and it's gone. I'm like, okay, great, fantastic. I've never seen anything do anything like that, so I'm impressed with it.
So I'm using ozone. I've been doing 10 pass with you. Before that, years ago in Chicago, as part of my journey back from Lyme and various other things that we'll discuss, I used major autohemotherapy, which is just a little bit of blood, and then
Right.
they put the ozone in there, and then they ran it through the UV light and put it back. But this is like that on steroids. I'm using it. My dad is using it now to help with his Parkinson's. There are pro athletes using it.
Yes.
I'm reading the Anthony Kiedis book. He's the lead singer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He wrote a book called Scar Tissue. The book opens up with him doing ozone to help with hepatitis C that he contracted doing drugs. So many applications. What do most people that come to KB Holistic come for? What do they believe is afflicting them?
Boy, and I did say earlier, I'd say Lyme is probably the biggest thing right now, but I have patients who basically are sick and exhausted and tired and don't even know why. And so it seems like the more testing we do, the more I'm finding people have a combination of often Lyme, and they have chronic viruses, and they have heavy metals, and the more we dig, they have various classes of poisons in their bodies, and it's just wearing them down, wearing their body's ability to naturally heal itself. And so, we work on various strategies of removing these poisons from their bodies so their bodies will start working better, making better use of the nutrients that they're eating, making better use of the ozone. But it's always, this equation of, what's in the water, what's in the food, what kind of stressors are you exposed to, and what is your backlog of poisons. And we have to really address all of those things to get somebody better. So ozone kind of just ramps people up and ramps up their mitochondria. But we do, it's not just, you can't just do ozone. I can't stress enough how important it is to filter your water, and I mean really be fanatical about it.
What type of filter do you use?
We use a triple filtration system at the sink that has a UV light.
Oh.
That gets out about, the one that we have, and I don't have the name, I can get it to you.
We'll put it in the
takes
show
out
notes.
about 99.9%, for instance, of fluorine. And I don't want any fluorine in my water because it's gonna mess with the iodine in my body. And iodine is critical, and we're not getting enough.
So people with thyroid issues, this is a big point you just
Huge.
made.
This is huge. But anybody who cares about their immune system, anybody who cares about their hormones, every cell in the body needs iodine. So I care about things like that, and I want them to drink the purest water, and I want them to, eat the purest food that they can get their hands on. And there are many people we do put on different kinds of fasts and things. It just depends where they are in their health journey. But some people, we will really want to clean up their diet and maybe minimize animal fats right now, but not always. So everybody has like a very specific prescription, and it always changes. And I think a lot of people out there are noticing that, like Jack Cruz, he'll say, your protocol right now is okay for now, but it's going to evolve as you do.
Right.
And so I stress to people what's right now might not be right 3 months from now. So we just have to get everybody into a place where they're starting to heal. But a lot of people have to detox, and they really have to provide the space for their body to remove those poisons.
The liver is one of our biggest detoxification organs, yet aside from milk thistle and some of the traditional things, it can be difficult for people to effectively detoxify their liver. You and I were talking about something I'm quite fond of, which are coffee enemas.
Okay.
And how have you utilized coffee enemas as a treatment intervention? You talked about a specific little twist that you add that I have never done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it depends what we're trying to get rid of. If somebody's liver is backed up and the bile ducts are backed up, coffee enemas are a wonderful way of really releasing a lot of that pressure. And of course, at the same time, you're replacing minerals, because you don't, it will remove some good minerals along with all that effluence out of the body. if anybody's familiar with coffee enemas, it's sort of like the space shuttle launch, rather, and you're going to lose potassium and magnesium. So you have to replace things. You can add some other nutrients. We have a protocol, but that's a good way to really get the liver to kind of throw up a little bit and get a lot of garbage out of your system that way. But if I really want to pull a lot more poison out of the liver, then we add castor oil. We have the patients add castor oil. And the castor oil is very good at grabbing things and pulling it along and getting it out of the body. The liver likes to recycle.
And this is like a food grade castor oil.
Yeah, everything
organic.
Has to be really, You
Okay.
can't just probably pick this up at CVS.
Right.
I mean, or your common drugstore. But, and you can take it orally. And everybody's got to follow a protocol. And you really want to be under, the direction of an experienced healthcare practitioner. I don't recommend people do this at home. You can hurt yourself. If you don't replace minerals, you can hurt yourself with coffee enemas. And if you don't take the right precautions with the castor oil, you could become dehydrated. And some people have abused these things and have died. So you really want to be very careful how you do this.
Yes, and it's a good time to say what our lawyers make us say, which is that this information is for entertainment purposes only.
Okay.
It is not meant to be construed as medical advice or a therapy or a cure. So take that with a grain of salt. We must say that.
Okay.
One of the things that I find to be challenging as someone who was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease in 2011, and at the time it was a huge relief because I was like, great, now I know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
In hindsight, we realized that it's a little bit of a faulty approach to just do a test that looks for the presence of a specific bacteria with how many bacteria are in our body and how many parasites and how many different molds and fungi and viruses. And then we say, oh, that one's present. That's responsible for all of your symptoms. How often when someone comes to you with Lyme, what percentage of the time are there other infections present?
It seems the more we test, the more we find. And so I started taking the approach of, why is this person so easily colonized? Why is this person having trouble with these bugs? I know other practitioners in other parts of the world, and they say, with muscle testing, we pick up these bugs all the time, and yet our patients aren't sick. So I don't know what's going into the equation, but I think we're just getting so many different insults from our food, poisons in the food, poisons in the air, poisons in the water, and it's wearing us down. And maybe these bugs are sensing a more acidic environment, a more dehydrated environment, a less oxygenated environment, and they're sensing the normal signals that we would give off that we're sick and dying, and they're becoming more virulent and taking advantage. So I think this whole thing between us and our microbiome is shifting because we don't sleep anymore, shifting because we're being exposed to abnormal daylight cycles and energy stressors in our environment. And I think that whole relationship we have with our microbiome is shifting.
I agree.
think we're becoming more vulnerable. Okay. So.
And we're just a little bit slow to pick up on this stuff. Like Louis Pasteur, who was responsible for germ theory,
Yes.
said on his deathbed that the microbe is nothing. The terrain, meaning our body, is everything.
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're saying here is like, if your immune system is run down because you're overloaded with toxins and you've developed autoimmune conditions because now you react to everything, just trying to kill a bacteria, in this example Lyme, is very unlikely to fix.
I think it's going to help,
situation.
and I think there's a time and a place for certain medicines, and I think that will maybe cut down on the load. But if we don't address nutrition, and if we don't address the host and making the host very strong and an inhospitable place, I think those bugs will come right back. So I think we have to work on the bugs. I think they can be nasty and they leave behind biotoxins, but I think we really have to build up the host. And I'd like to see more of that going into treatment. And I'll mention this because I told you Dr. Shoemaker's done a lot of work with biotoxin illness, and he's really brought to light that, hey, clearly the environment is playing a role here. And if we don't fix the environment and we send the person right back home to that, like for instance with a mold damaged building, they're going to get sick again. So, but I think that's going to be, I think that should be a more widespread consideration in other illnesses too. And I think that's going to be applied to other areas of medicine, and that's a huge burden for doctors, because I think we're not prepared for that. But I think if we don't really pay attention to that, we're going to have problems.
What are some of the initial places that you start when someone comes to you and they're not feeling great? We'll talk about some of the applications for athletic performance and increasing time to fatigue. But when someone comes to you and they're not feeling well, what are the things you look at first and some of the initial recommendations that you make?
Well, I really want to find out what the patient has learned about their illness, and I sometimes people will come to me with a ring binder this thick with information, and we try to see what they have gone through to bring them to this moment. We try to do a very detailed history. We really want to look at their diet, at their living circumstance, and and what they're willing to do, because everybody, you could have 10 people with sort of the same problems that we might test in labs, but this person travels, this person is never at home all the time, this person has never cooked for themselves before. So we really have to see what people are willing to do to help themselves, and then we have some basic blood work that we do. I certainly want to know, I want to know what their blood count is. I want to know how their liver's doing. I want some very basic things about their kidneys. And some of the things that I do might not be what the next person does, but for us, we like to do some kind of mineral analysis and looking at heavy metals.
Right.
Because heavy metals make everything just terrible, and they make your body a more hospitable place for viruses and for intracellular parasites and things like that. So I want to get the metals out. Metals make us more vulnerable to other things, and so I do mineral analysis, and that's...
Is that a hair tissue mineral analysis?
Okay. And I only work with one lab that I like, and some people don't like that, but I find that very helpful in a non-provocative way to test for metals. People who are very sick, who wind up having very high levels of metals, I'm glad I didn't give them a provocative test to sort of squeeze them, because it can redistribute all those metals all over their brain, and if they already have brain fog, that's the last thing they need. So
that's an important point.
Okay,
yeah.
And then after that, I guess the next most important thing is I want to know about iodine. So I really think it's very important to look at iodine levels, and that's very easy to correct, but it has to be done properly. And then when people have a lot of neurologic symptoms, I told you more and more we're doing the RBC membrane test, and that tells me pretty much the state of somebody's brain and how their cell membranes are, and if they have the proper amount of insulation on their nerves. It really can tell me if there's viral fats in them. It pretty much tells me if they've been eating McDonald's. It tells me what they're made of structurally. Okay, because I'm really into fats and eating fats correctly. So that pretty much will tell me what their
keto?
house is made of.
When you say you're really into fats, is someone like, oh, I'm keto?
Well, a little bit. I think everything in moderation. I'm not sure if this is going to hold up with time, but our cell membranes and the membranes that cover everything in our cells is where all the activity is. It's truly the brain of the cell. And so the structural integrity and what goes into making those cell membranes will determine everything about us, how we interact with all the other cells, how we respond to hormones, how we respond to all the chemical messengers. It all happens on the membranes. And so I'm very interested in how that is made. Okay? So I want to build the person up, so hopefully they will not be so vulnerable to viruses and all these other nasty things that want to grow on us if we give them the opportunity.
It does certainly seem like the health of our cell membranes can be the rate limiting factor in our overall health. Yes. And how well we're able to get toxins out of the cells and nutrients in, and how we'll probably find that's a big part of how effectively our cells communicate with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, mitochondria and all the other structures in the cells are all with their own, they all have their own membrane too. So I really want to know how that is made. Okay?
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned checking for metals. You don't necessarily do a DMSA provocation test, but you lean towards a hair tissue mineral analysis test. And then you've been using a lot more recently the red blood cell membrane test, which you said is not to be confused with some from other popular labs.
Right. There's other tests where they're really measuring the fats in the blood. But this is actually the fats in the structure of your cells. So I want to know how, I look at everybody's cells like an individual house. I want to know how that house is made. And there are structural fats and there's fats for other functions, and they have to be in the right proportions or the person will not function right. It's like this house or any structure. You want concrete walls and good structural support, but you want other parts of the membrane to let things in and out like windows. But you don't want too many windows. You don't want too many doors, because if you have a hurricane come by, a glass house is going to fall apart, right? So
Right.
we want to be the right proportion of things. So.
Beautiful. So quick recap on some of Dr. Bravo's action steps so far. If you're dealing with Lyme or chronic illness right now, don't necessarily accept just that the presence of a bacteria
Correct.
or virus is responsible for everything. Look at your environment. Look at the food you're putting in your body. Look
Right.
at the presence. Look for the test for the presence of heavy metals. The health of your cell membranes. What's the name of the test or that for?
We go through Kennedy Krieger through the NIH, and
Okay.
then it goes partly through another company called Body Bio, which is where a very famous PhD, Patricia Kane, she's involved with that, and so she has a lot to do with the analysis. But this just gives an incredible wealth of information, okay? And I find that when we put people back together, when we get the garbage out of their system, and when we structurally, advise them how to make better cell membranes, a lot of their problems just start going away, okay? And we know that if you're in the presence of healthy things, you turn on healthier genes and you behave better. And it's not fair. You think when you put a poison in your immediate space, your genes would behave better, but they don't. They actually behave worse. And I know Dan Pompa will tell you that. So, this is all about, feeding you the right things to turn on the right genes to be a better host and keep away these bugs. So that's how I see it.
Beautiful. So the ozone that I just did, 10 passes, we added methylene blue. We added
Liposomal methylene blue.
liposomal methylene blue.
Because we did polychromatic UV light.
Yeah, let's talk about the UV light. What does that do? What does the methylene blue do? What is, we've talked a little bit about phosphatidylcholine, but maybe we'll mention that, how this whole stack is benefiting my cells right now. And then we'll get into the rapid fire round.
Well, the UV light, the various wavelengths of the light that are in this system are chosen because of the effects that they have on your mitochondria. They amp up the oxidative effects of the ozone, and they sort of both work synergistically. They're both working on different parts of the mitochondria and energy production. They both have a synergistic effect in killing bugs. So I have found that people do much better with the two combined, particularly when they have Lyme, particularly when they have neurologic symptoms. The ozone does a wonderful thing, but the UV light works in conjunction. The methylene blue also sort of amps up and improves that whole effect. I don't want to bore anybody with biochemistry, but it's all about
some people nerd out on it. Some people glaze over.
Well,
it's a mix.
It's really all about picking up, the mitochondria and the immune system.
Yeah.
And so again, it's one part killing, but one part, picking us up. I don't just want to go in there and kill a bunch of bugs and let the body clean up. We can do more than that with this. We can actually pick up all the mitochondria of all the white blood cells. And suddenly it's like we're killing for them, but we're also giving them little guns and letting them kill as well. Mm-hmm. And, so it's doing that to every cell in the body. And places where antibiotics cannot go, ozone, which is a little tiny molecule, and, where the UV light can get to. So it's getting into spaces that we just can't get to with some of our typical arsenal of antibiotic drugs. So it's a nice complement to the two. There's a time and a place for pharmaceuticals, mm-hmm. but the ozone does get into places that I can't imagine antibiotics could reach.
Mm-hmm. And I'm someone that has done a smorgasbord of antibiotics over the years. Mm-hmm. I've done everything from cat's claw, cemento, to viral protocols, and everything in between. And what you brought up that was interesting is that a lot of these antibiotics are very ineffective at getting into the cell, into that intracellular space, yes, where many pathogens can hide and mm-hmm. sort of harbor themselves away from our immune system.
Right.
And the ozone and the methylene blue and some of these things and the UV light.
Right, and they all break up, and the ozone for sure breaks up a lot of these biofilms mm-hmm. that shield them. So it does a number of things to really help the immune system.
Biofilms being like a protective matrix of a whole bunch of stuff, right?
And I think that we're going to discover a lot more about ozone's effects over time, and I really want to see more research done in this field. And I think more and more doctors are really, saying we need more. I need more. I need more in my toolkit. I don't have enough with antibiotics. So I do know that huge people in the field like Robert Rowan are actually getting through to a lot of doctors who are very involved with Lyme. He's had great successes, and so he's sharing this with everybody. Mm-hmm. And he's teaching people, and there's lots of different organizations that are now saying, hey, let's teach all these doctors ozone because it's really helping people. So I'm seeing more and more conferences where it's being offered,
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we're going to see that in the future. But I think nothing beats 10 pass. I think nothing beats hyperbaric ozone, and I have done other techniques, and I think any ozone is better than none, but the 10 pass really makes a difference because it puts so much ozone into your body at once. And sometimes it really matters if you really raise concentrations. We did an ozone injection in your elbow. Why didn't the 10 pass get to it? Because it would take too much in your blood to get that concentration right into your elbow.
Right.
So, it's all about, getting the right medicine to the right place in the right concentration. And we just can't get, the older drip technique, MAH, where you're basically taking some blood and you're mixing it with ozone, hand mix, and let it drip back, drip, 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 that's okay. But with the 10 pass, you're just getting a phenomenal amount of ozone. And people who have Lyme probably have it in various parts of their body, and you just have to get the concentration up to get to it. Okay? I don't see anything. I did not get these kinds of results until I did the 10 pass. So.
Yeah, it does seem like people who have treatment-resistant conditions or haven't responded to major autohemotherapy or ozone saunas often do have breakthroughs and experience improvement when they start doing 10 pass.
Right.
Would you say that looking for someone who does 10 pass may be a good selection criteria in finding a knowledgeable ozone practitioner? Because there's so many types.
Yeah, I know there is. I think it's a good place to start. I'm not saying that those are the only doctors that can help. I think that we all need to start sharing information, and maybe we'll have more refined techniques beyond that. I hope we will with time. So I'm not saying if somebody doesn't do 10 pass, it's not going to help. Any ozone's better than none. But, I am noticing a difference in the outcomes that we get now that we're doing 10 pass. Okay, so I believe in it. Okay?
Beautiful,
but
yeah.
The 10 pass plus the UV light, I think we're getting better results now. So, with time we may find other things that help. And what do we do with you? We did a phosphol injection right after your treatment, and it was our observation, it's great for neurologic symptoms, but I noticed all those patients weren't getting detox reactions as much or to the same extent.
Interesting.
So, we're tweaking things and we're learning things with time.
So you're saying adding the phosphatidylcholine, which we know helps to rebuild the cellular membranes,
right?
may also reduce detox reactions.
That's my observation. Okay, so I thought, well, this is great, and we would give it to people who were here and they were having neurologic symptoms, but then I noticed, hey, they're not getting detox reactions anymore. So we're pretty much asking people to take it, just to try to stave off any kind of detox.
Excellent. Okay. What's Dr. Karen Bravo's favorite supplement?
Oh gosh, boy, that's tough. It would have to be either, turmeric or phosphol. I don't know. That's tough.
Two good picks. I just picked up a bottle of the phosphol from you that I'll be taking home. I'm excited about that.
Good stuff.
How do you get motivated when you're not feeling it?
Boy, I don't know. I always feel motivated. Usually somebody comes in who really pushes me. I have patients who come in and there's usually somebody who comes in and I have to scratch my head and I'm not sure, and then I have to go to the literature, I have to go to my colleagues, I have to learn. People are always driving me to learn more. I really, the typical person who comes in today is so different than even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Very sick.
It's almost as if these massive changes we've made to our environment are reflected in our internal environment.
Yes,
and we're
I think so. Having
these diseases, or rather a collection of symptoms that we've given a name, just arising at such a quick pace.
I call my colleagues and I say, are you seeing this? Are you seeing that? And we share. And I'm very fortunate. If you're trained by Dr. Rowan, you basically join a huge conversation of doctors who are sharing information. And I'm part of an organization called Ozone Without Borders, which invites doctors and patients alike to learn about ozone, to be very open-minded, to allow physicians to basically bring to a forum, different techniques that they're using that are helping people without prejudice. And so, somebody might have something better. I want to hear about it. If they're having results and it's working, then I want to hear about it. And I want everybody to be like that and to share, because the patients are the ones that are going to benefit. So we need to be open-minded.
I agree.
So.
And you were talking about that Ozone Without Borders conference in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica in April. I think 4th to the 8th.
We'll link to that too. I'm going to make it a point to get there in 2020. Favorite book you've ever read, or at least the one that's had the biggest impact on your life?
Wow. Wish you'd given me a list of questions beforehand. Favorite book? My gosh. Boy, that's a tough one. I don't know.
We can always come back to it. No big deal.
That's just too many things. I read too many things. I can't. That's too much.
I read too much. I read
yeah.
too much.
Read too much.
Dave Matthews Band. Not favorite. If you suspect a viral issue,
Right.
Epstein-Barr, Hep C, herpes simplex, what test do you get?
Well, it depends. Different tests are like our antibody titers, because we see a lot of HSV, and we're doing quantitative antibody titers.
HSV, herpes simplex virus. Yeah.
And we get actually stunning results with Dr. Robbins' method. You can look him up online. Howard Robbins from New York. He's probably one of the 3 biggest people in the country that does ozone. And his claim to fame is that he does ozone where he does a direct in-vein technique, and we do follow his protocols. And it does take time, and I know people want miracles, but if you follow his protocol, eventually the patients win with the virus. Their antibody levels come down. They're no longer having symptoms. They feel great. Okay? So it works. You've seen it.
Last question. On average, someone who's dealing with Lyme, chronic illness, what time frame, when you're using ozone and some of these other interventions that we've talked about, what time frame does it usually take before they're feeling better and like coming back to life?
Everybody's so different, and I'd love to say all these patients have Lyme, but the more we dig, I told you, the more we find things, and so it's very hard to equate, say, a woman in her 40s, with a young man who's 25, or an older gentleman who's 65. It's very hard. Everybody's got different physiology. But I would say that, if we start working on diet and water and other pollutants, and, if there's really a good effort that way, I find it takes about 10 treatments to really start turning the corner.
10 treatments of 10 pass?
Yeah, 10 treatments of 10 pass.
Okay, so that's good to kind of...
But there are other things that we're doing. I mean, if this person is eating a terrible diet and they're completely stressed out with their home life, or they're not sleeping, or, it's going to be harder for them. Ozone can only do so much, right? So it unfortunately, and it may seem inconvenient, but if you want to rebuild a person, it's not going to come in a pill. It's not going to come in a quick injection. They're going to have to really clean themselves up, what they're eating, what they're drinking. It's stopping the inflow of poisons and getting to the backlog of poisons, and amping the body up with things like ozone and other nutraceuticals and things like that. Okay?
And I would be beside myself if I didn't mention that neither of us have Wi-Fi in our homes.
Correct.
You don't, and I don't either. And we won't go there, but you guys, there are plenty of episodes with Nick Pino where we've talked about EMFs and some of those things. I think this is a fantastic body of recommendations for someone that's maybe wondering what's going on. Or if you're like Kobe Bryant or some of these other people that have used ozone for performance enhancement, there's huge applications there. I feel more energetic. I feel like my mind is sharper and my body works better when I'm doing it regularly. So
I'm sure when you go to if you go to the gym tomorrow, you're going to have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if you didn't. I want to know.
I will let you know.
I would like to know.
And thank you so much for everything that you do, for taking care of me and people all over the world who come in for your services. We appreciate it. For those that are listening or watching, where's the best place for people to stay up to date on your work, things that you've got going on, or to find out more about how they could work with you?
We're very old-fashioned. Give us a call. We love to do consultations with people. I will spend time on the phone. We have a very, low-key, very, one-on-one kind of practice, and it's not a high volume, but I would rather help a few people very thoroughly than have this high volume. And we may have more volume eventually, but right now you spend a lot of time one-on-one with me and my assistant, and we work with everybody individually.
Beautiful. And what's your website?
kbholistic.com, and we need to expand more of that information, but I really feel it's, we want to have that old-fashioned doctor-patient relationship and work together. So come here, be relaxed, and let's work on your healing. So,
Dr. Bravo, thank you so much.
Thank you.